The conversion story from ICE two-wheelers to electrics in India has been mainly scooters. And as enjoyable as some of them are, a lot of us are hardcore motorcyclists at heart. So if you too have been waiting for that perfect beginner electric bike, the Matter Aera is one of the latest options for you in India. And spoiler alert, it's a fun one. Now if you're an early adopter, you'd but obviously want something that stands out. And the Matter Aera, that does it quite well. It's sporty, it's sharp, it's aggressive, but all of that without being over the top or polarizing. In fact, it has a sense of elegance to it, something I quite like. As for the fit and finish levels, they're acceptable from a distance, but move closer and you'll see some weld spots and a couple of exposed wires. Something you wouldn't really like to see on a bike for which you're paying more than 2 lakh rupees.
Now while those might be acceptable, what I definitely did not like was the charger cover. It feels flimsy and has too much play when closed. And the big panel gap on the top part of the cover, it's already giving me anxiety as to what will happen when it rains heavily. Something that is pretty much inevitable in most parts of our country. On the other hand, one thing I absolutely loved was the front storage compartment. We might not show it, but us motorcyclists are usually desperate for such storage compartments. And this one, it does not disappoint. Even with the charger in, there's just enough room for it to accommodate a smartphone as well as the key fob. Given that the bike has keyless entry, it gave my mind so much peace knowing that the key fob was stored away in such a secure space instead of something like my jeans pocket, where I might keep a normal key, but maybe not a fancier key fob.
The highlight though, it has to be that motor.
It's a 10.5 kilowatt unit with a 105 kmph claimed top speed. As for the range, Matter claims that with the 5 kWh battery pack, the Aera has a 125 km real-world range. Charging the battery to 80% will take 5 hours, while a full charge will take 6 hours. The same times come down to 1.5 hours and 2 hours respectively with a fast charger.
Eco mode, it's a proper hypermiling one for the days when you are on a battery crunch. But city mode, it's nice, it has torque and you can easily cruise at 50 to 60 kmph, which are usually the maximum coasting speeds in the city. But if you want something more than just easy commuting, Sport is the one for you. It'll nicely sit at 90 to 100 kmph, ensuring that even your short highway jaunts are taken care of. And in the city, it has a good pull that'll ensure you can target all the little gaps that you want to.
On these open roads of Bhuj, I did maintain speeds of about 80 kmph continuously for about 15 to 20 kilometers and did not see any kind of derating in the motor's performance. So yeah, while this bike is meant to be a commuter, it'll definitely handle the short highway jaunts that I talked about earlier.
My overall riding experience though, it was hampered by this gearbox. I mean, all of you complaining that electric bikes have no feel because of the lack of a gearbox. Well, here's finally an electric bike with a proper 4-speed gearbox. This one though, it makes you wonder, do you really need a gearbox on an electric bike? Now given the lack of an engine, there's obviously no engine braking as you downshift. So what the gearbox essentially does is that it unlocks a higher top speed. For example, in sports mode, the bike does around 40 kmph in first gear. And then you have to shift to the second gear to go up until about 60 kmph. Post which you have to shift in the third gear for around 80 kmph, and then fourth gear ensures that you reach your top speed. But my problem is, given the lack of an engine noise, I never know when I'm hitting the top speed of that particular gear. For example, in the first gear, the bike pulls really nicely to about 38-39 kmph, and then the moment it hits 40 kmph, it's like the bike hits a rev limiter. And that honestly interrupts the exciting flow of acceleration. And that is honestly quite annoying. See, the unique thing about riding an EV is that the moment you whack open the throttle, the bike pulls to its top speed in an uninterrupted manner. Something that's missing here. Yeah, you do upshift in ICE bikes, but they have an engine that makes noises to let you know when the red line is approaching and when you need to upshift. Something that's again missing here. And that means the Matter Aera, it's left stranded in the middle.
The solution, a lot of you might say, is to just slot it in 4th gear and ride it for that one uninterrupted pull, right? But the issue with that is that starting the bike in 4th gear doesn't have the same kind of pull and excitement as the 1st gear. It only starts pulling post about 30 kmph, and that kind of defeats the purpose of an EV, which is exciting acceleration right off the bat.
But otherwise, the overall package is actually quite enjoyable. Whatever a couple of fast-flowing corners we faced, the bike genuinely handled well and I enjoyed it. We even faced some bad roads and the bike's suspension felt nice and plush. I do suspect this will be a sporty but reasonably comfortable bike in the city.
The Aera is a 7-inch touchscreen TFT that I quite liked as well. Of course, you won't be able to operate it with gloves on unless your gloves are touchscreen compatible, but what I really liked was the response time. Touch it and you'll see that it's not unnervingly quick, but also definitely not laggy. The response time is just enough for it to feel very natural, and the overall experience is very similar to that of using a smartphone. In terms of features, this 7-inch TFT has pretty much everything you want. Right from practical bits like storing your documents, vehicle health checkup, and service reminders, to the more nerdy stuff like your ride stats and even lean angles. This console, it has it all. What I really liked was the layout when you use the turn-by-turn navigation. It's simple and very clean, and while it does take up the entire screen, it keeps displaying your gear position, speed, and the ride mode at the bottom left, which are three of the things you do want to glance at every now and then. That said, I think the lack of hill hold is a bit of a miss. Given that slotting the bike in gear will not prevent it from rolling, managing this 169 kilo bike on an inclined surface could get a bit tricky. And having experienced a good hill hold system on our long-termer Aether 450X, I have realized that it makes things just so much more convenient. So I think at this price point, the Aera should have definitely gotten it as well.
The Matter Aera is actually built on a very sweet platform. The motor and the handling, they're definitely the standout bits for me, and even the easy to use but feature loaded TFT console is very nice. The gearbox though, that is my first and major complaint. It prevents the Aera from having a seamless acceleration experience like EVs would, but the lack of an engine means the bike doesn't speak to you like an ICE bike would. And that brings me to my second complaint. A price tag of Rs 1.74 lakh for the base variant means the Matter Aera isn't the best value for your money. And that's especially when you consider that bikes like the TVS Apache RTR 160-4V, the RTR 180 and even the very likeable Pulsar N160 are all available for much lesser money. These things said, Matter will soon be taking the Aera all around India for test rides and the commencement of deliveries. So if you are okay with the downsides that I talked about, I would suggest go test ride this bike and see what you feel about India's first electric bike with a gearbox.